Hello and welcome to the PrecisCa Multidisciplinary Genitourinary Tumor Panel. My name is Jason Abel. I'm a urologic oncologist at the University of Wisconsin. To begin, we'll just go around the panel, introduce yourself and your expertise. Dr. Melnick.
My name is Vincent Melnick from Washington University in St. Louis, and I'm an abdominal radiologist.
Hi, my name is Matt Reddick. I'm a medical oncologist specializing in genitourinary malignancies.
I'm Larry Keston, a radiation oncologist in the Detroit, Michigan area. I'm the medical director of the Michigan region for MHP Radiation Oncology Institute and Genesis Care.
Yes, I'm Ethar Derwish. I'm a urologic oncologist at the University of California, San Diego.
55-year-old female with stage 4 clear cell renal cell cancer of the left kidney, status post left cytoreductive nephrectomy. One of the questions we'll be discussing is what are the recommendations following nephrectomy. So the patient presented with pain has an ECOG performance status of 1. The past medical history includes hypertension, morbid obesity, no tobacco, alcohol use or drug use, no GU cancer history or other cancer history. Dr. Melnick, could you interpret this scan for us?
Certainly. This is a single CT image with contrast. You can see in the left kidney, as is described in the narrative you provided, there is a contour abnormality laterally. Doesn't have the normal shape of a kidney, and this mass is enhancing less than the adjacent renal cortex. It's not fluid and doesn't have any macroscopic fat within it. It certainly would be suspicious for a solid renal tumor here. Don't see the periaortic lymphadenopathy discussed in the case, but obviously this is just one image.
So on the CT chest and abdomen scan, heterogeneously enhancing solid mass in the left kidney, as Dr. Melnick described. The mass has a partial exophytic component and some cystic and necrotic foci extending to gerardus fascia with surrounding fat stranding, no extension into the perirenal space. There's also extensive periaortic lymphadenopathy with one node measuring about 2.7 centimeters in the greatest dimension. In addition, a left supraclavicular lymph node was concerning for metastatic deposit. The patient underwent a cytoreductive nephrectomy in February 2021, diagnosed grade 3 clear cell renal cell cancer, 5.5 centimeters in its greatest dimensions with negative margins. The patient also had a fine needle aspiration of a left supraclavicular node, which was positive for malignant cells. Dr. Derwish, if we start at the beginning, could you talk a little bit about which patients you think are the best candidates for upfront cytoreductive nephrectomy versus upfront systemic therapy?
Thank you, Dr. Abel. I think that patients who have a limited amount of metastatic disease, patients whose primary dominant tumor burden tends to be in the kidney, are the best candidates. Certainly, patients who may be symptomatic and acutely symptomatic can be also considered if they don't have significant high risk metastatic burden elsewhere. But I would say I would put it in one of those 3 categories.
Dr. Reddick, from a medical oncology perspective, could you talk a little bit about how you counsel patients about the choice between upfront surgery versus systemic therapy?
Yeah, so I think when we talk about surgery, we talk about the cytoreductive nephrectomy, which is really just reducing the tumor burden, not for the purpose of alleviating symptoms, versus a palliative nephrectomy. So cytoreductive nephrectomy was used especially in an era before we had a lot of the new targeted agents. And cytoreductive nephrectomy in that context had been shown to improve overall survival. The data for cytoreductive nephrectomy for patients who are undergoing systemic therapy with one of the new targeted agents is less clear. So while the cytoreductive nephrectomy is a reasonable option, it might be appropriate to move this patient into systemic therapy fairly soon, whether it's it replaces the cytoreductive nephrectomy as the first line therapy, or in this case, subsequent to the cytoreductive nephrectomy.
Dr. Derwish, this patient has a significant radiographic lymphadenopathy. Can you discuss the role of lymph node dissection in patients with metastatic kidney cancer?
Dr. Abel, that's a really key and a great question. I think that if a patient has oligometastatic disease and we can achieve a complete resection with a lymph node dissection, then it's something that's technically feasible and isn't going to add significant morbidity and potentially delay systemic therapy if it's necessary elsewhere. Then I think it's reasonable to do. I don't think there's a role for doing a staging lymphadenectomy in the setting of metastatic disease where there are distant metastases and there's no radiographic or notable no radiographic lymphadenopathy. And then finally, in the setting of really extensive lymphatic disease and invasion in a primary tumor, that the patient may be best off with starting systemic therapy.
Dr. Rettig, could you discuss the IMDC system a little bit and how we use this system to risk stratify patients and choose their therapy?
Sure. So this is a system to risk stratify patients into one of three groups: favorable, intermediate, and poor risk. And there are several factors that are used to determine risk. One is the time from the initial surgery, if the patient had localized disease, to a metastatic recurrence. And again, this is for metastatic disease only. In this case, the patient was diagnosed with metastatic disease at the time of the initial diagnosis. So that time from surgery to the recurrence is 0. The other factors include the patient's functional or performance status, calcium level, the platelet count, neutrophil count, and something called the hemoglobin, a measure of anemia. If the patient has none of these risk factors, that's called favorable risk. If it's more risk factors, you can fall into the intermediate risk, such as this patient who had at least one. We don't have the benefit of knowing all the laboratory results. So for a patient in the intermediate risk group, we probably would move forward with systemic therapy. There are some patients in the favorable risk group who don't have symptoms, who have relatively low disease burden, who can be monitored expectantly. And many of these patients can remain without progression or worsening of the disease for quite some time, even years before systemic therapy is required.
Yeah, so with several frontline treatments available for intermediate risk patients, how do you choose among them?
Yeah, there's a lot of different possibilities. So some of it depends upon the patient's medical problems, what we call their comorbidities, that in certain circumstances might render a particular drug as contraindicated. So as an example, if the patient had an autoimmune disease, we wouldn't use a immunotherapy because that can profoundly worsen, exacerbate that underlying autoimmune disease. So I think simply the way I would think about it is there are two basic choices. One is immunotherapy only, and the other one is immunotherapy plus a targeted agent, and the targeted agent targets the blood vessel producing system called angiogenesis inhibitors. With the angiogenesis inhibitors, they're combined with a single immunotherapy. And when we use immunotherapy, the best treatment would be a combination of two different immunotherapy drugs. So either way that we go, we're using two drugs.
So if this patient was treated with a nephrectomy and a lymph node dissection, and then undergoes some staging scans that showed just the supraclavicular node, would she be a candidate for metastasis-directed therapy such as stereotactic radiation, ablation, or surgery?
Yeah, I think so. It's certainly an option. I like to do that if there's no evidence of polymetastatic disease. If the patient's only site of metastasis is the supraclavicular node, it's reasonable to target that with focused radiation typically, although surgical resection of certain metastases could be appropriate as well. In this case, I think that would be a very reasonable approach and can, in some cases, even be curative. Most typically, when it's effective, it delays the further recurrence of the disease or further progression of the disease and the need for systemic therapy.
Dr. Keston, could you comment briefly on how the radiation treatment would be planned, and what's your expectations for local recurrence-free survival in patients with metastatic or solitary renal cell cancer metastasis would be?
Certainly. Thank you, Dr. Abel. So in this particular situation, we're looking at potentially, in the scenario that's been described, a solitary metastasis to the left supraclavicular location. One can certainly consider radiation treatment in that situation, with everything else after full staging appearing to be controlled. Sometimes one may even consider that in a quote oligometastatic setting, which might mean up to 3, 4, or even 7 locations in some of the trials, but for the most part, that's usually 3 to 4 or less locations. One can certainly add local radiation treatment in those scenarios. For this patient with a left supraclavicular lymph node involved, it is a little more difficult to use what we would consider to be the ideal approach with radiation treatment, which is stereotactic body radiation therapy, or SBRT. And that really refers to radiation treatment in a very modern fashion, where we deliver a very high dose per session in a small number of sessions. And that would typically be on the order of 3 to 5 sessions or treatments. And ideally, if I were able to, that is the route that I would take. I would try to perform SBRT. In the setting of the left supraclavicular location, due to the surrounding structures and the brachial plexus, the esophagus, that becomes oftentimes much more difficult. So we try to give what we consider a definitive or more curative dose of radiation treatment in a different manner. And in order to reduce the side effects, we usually divide the radiation dose up into more sessions. In this particular instance, it might be reasonable to use a hypofractionated course where maybe we deliver the radiation treatment in 10 or 20 sessions, delivering a curative dose in that manner. For patients with renal cell carcinoma, I mean, it depends on multiple factors, which you've already discussed. But patients with metastatic renal cell carcinoma, especially a solitary metastasis, can have a very lengthy survival, especially after response to initial therapies. A patient in that situation could live for a very long time.
So in a 54-year-old female patient who was treated with upfront cytoreductive nephrectomy, the multidisciplinary panel discussed the next steps to consider would be restaging scans and either beginning systemic treatment with a combination of immune checkpoint inhibitor therapies or a combination of an immune checkpoint and a targeted therapy. Metastasis-directed therapy may also be appropriate if the disease burden is low after restaging.